live. All right. Welcome in, everybody who's listening. I am Ethan Brooks, as you all know, joined this week by a recent friend, Abhishek Shah. And we're going to talk about newsletters. So Abhi has some really interesting stuff going on. He is the creator behind a newsletter called Psychology of Marketing, which has grown incredibly fast. He is also the creator of Newsletters 101, which is I'll call it a media company based around newsletters, because it started as a podcast and has expanded into newsletters as well. In fact, I think you've published more newsletters than podcasts so far, right?
Yeah, by far.
So so you got that going on. And then not a contrarian thinker, or what is it? Non-contrarian thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of media brands going on. But I'm stoked to have you in. So for the background, for people listening, Abhi reached out when he was first launching the podcast to set up an interview, because I've done some research in the newsletter world, and he wanted to get some of those insights for his listeners. And just in the course of the conversation, I realized that I wasn't just talking to somebody who was interested in newsletters. He's done an incredible job growing his own so far. So Psychology of Marketing is about 6 months old, maybe a little less. I looked back at the archives and the content goes back 4 to 5 months, really seriously. In that time, you've grown it to somewhere between 15 and 20,000 subscribers and $30,000 in revenue. And is that revenue, or is that like a run rate? So run rate.
So it's like a annual revenue projected.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So 30K revenue in run rate so far, but it's still incredibly early. So that's it's awesome. You're crushing it. So what I wanted to do was flip the script, pull him into this show, and learn more about how he's doing it. So Abhi, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here, and just excited to chat newsletters at any point. So let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So, and by the way, I don't know if people can hear this, but he's young as hell too. What are you, 22, 23, something like that? 20?
20. Yeah, 20.
That's awesome. Okay. So, there's a ton that I want to talk to you about, but why don't we start with newsletters? So you say on your website, obsessed with newsletters. That's kind of one of the ways that you characterize yourself. Can you just take me back the last couple of months? Where'd that obsession come from? Why did this become your thing?
I mean, I think how most newsletter related stories start today is when you start reading either The Hustle or The Morning Brew. I think that's a general college kid's introduction to newsletters. So that's how it started. I was just reading Hustle, The Morning Brew, a loyal subscriber. And I was actually looking for internships my junior summer. My sophomore summer. I'm a junior right now. So my sophomore summer, I was looking for internships. And at that point, I'd already started creating some content on Twitter. And something caught my eye. So I saw this this buzz on Twitter. I kept seeing Beehive, at Beehive. This is the best email service provider and stuff like that. And I was okay, I really need to know what this is. So I checked it out. And then I found the tool itself very interesting. And I was in that phase of my life where I wanted to start something, start a startup. And I think at this point, every college kid wants to start a startup. So I was at that point, and I was just looking for something to do. And I was I think since I'm already doing Twitter and I'm getting some traction, maybe I can leverage that audience and build a newsletter. I wouldn't say business at the time. I was just thinking more so a side project. And that's how it started. So I started using Beehive. And I love the platform so much that I cold emailed Tyler, the founder of Beehive, 2 or 3 months before my summer started. He didn't reply the first time. I followed up with him, and then he finally replied. I got on a call with him. And then, so that was sort of the first interview. Then we had a second interview, and literally in the summer, I was working with them from India remotely. And that was by far one of the best experiences, because that team ships super fast and they know so much about newsletters. And that's when I think the rabbit hole started. I was just learning so much about the newsletter space that I couldn't help but get obsessed with it. And I think that's where the obsession started.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that actually about your background. So I know Tyler. I was actually talked to him right when he was planning to start Beehive. For people listening, Tyler Dank was he's the founder of Beehive. he was employee number 1 essentially at Morning Brew. Him and employee number 2 were hired on the same day. So it's kind of like when twins have the same birthday and they argue over who's older. But yeah, he's a growth engineer by trade, built out a ton of the Morning Brew's systems that made like their company so successful. And then when the Morning Brew sold to Business Insider, as typically happens in like an exit, some of the employees stay, some of the employees use that as an opportunity to go launch their own thing. So he, I think, went to Google for a while and then launched Bee Hive shortly thereafter. So he was super helpful in some of the research that we were doing at the Hustle, like just on the newsletter industry. I had no idea you worked with him.
Yeah, it is.
Like, what kind of stuff were you doing there?
So I was learning like growth marketing stuff. So I was interested in marketing. I want to do something in that space. And like I was doing growth marketing stuff. But more than that, I was just like sitting there, like sitting in all the meetings and like learning about the newsletter space, like what visions Tyler and his team have, which are pretty spectacular, if you ask me. So yeah.
Do you mind telling me a little bit more about that? Like, I want to hear about both of those things. So, and to whatever degree you can talk. I know you don't speak for Tyler, but like, what was it that was so captivating about their vision for newsletters?
So I think I actually started off by like reading about Tyler before I even emailed him, and it was this piece on Medium that he wrote on Morning Brew's referral program. And like he goes in like I'm sure you must have read it too, but he goes super into the depth over there. And I just found that so fascinating. Like this guy is definitely obsessed with newsletters as well. And then like when you talk to him, like the first time I spoke to him, we spoke about how he wants to build this like ad platform that is like the equivalent of a Facebook. And that vision like was what like got me hooked, because I saw him talk about the same thing on another podcast as well. So just like seeing his vision and like seeing how he was going about it, like that was like his North Star. And like today, like they actually launched an ad network. So you can clearly see that they're working towards it. But back then it was like like a team of 8 and like me. And that was like such a cool time to be part of this like small startup. Because like when you see it today, or like when you see it like 5 years down the line, like I'm hoping I can like go around and be like, yo, like I worked at that startup. Because like I feel like that's going to be like a pretty cool thing to say.
Yeah, something tells me that's definitely going to work out. I mean, for people listening to Beehive's really interesting for a few different reasons. So I think a lot of people might look at it on the surface and be like, oh, this is like a Substack. And that's not entirely inaccurate because they are a newsletter platform, but a lot of their models are very different from Substack. So like where Substack takes a cut of revenue, Beehive is a straight membership fee, right? Like you pay.
Yeah, it's a subscription-based thing instead of a fee-based, commission-based thing.
Yeah. So, and again, for people listening, like the reason that's important is one thing, and this has been a challenge for Substack so far, as a newsletter business grows, if you're paying a portion of your revenue to your email subscriber, like very quickly that can seem out of proportion with the value that, or like it's just, it just becomes a huge number. So you have, what is Substack these days? 10%?
Yeah, I think it's around 10%.
Yeah. So if your newsletter is doing like $1 million a year, which several Substackers are, you're paying like $100,000 a year for the platform. And so the idea with Beehive, one of the things that they first differentiated themselves on was this concept of like, no, we're just going to charge a flat subscription fee. But then there's, like you said, the ad network, and then
so the inbuilt referral program, like Tyler is like basically known for the referral program and his takes on that at Morning Brew. And he like took that and basically spun it up to build like an inbuilt referral program. So like I can go on Beehive right now and in like 20 clicks or like maybe even like 10 clicks, build the entire referral program structured almost closely to Morning Brew's referral program, which has done wonders for them.
That's wild.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, so it was a cool team to work on, and you were literally learning growth marketing from the guy, you know.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that you picked up there that you still carry with you in terms of like your approach to growth marketing?
Like growth. So one thing I realized like right off the bat was how much Tyler spoke with like the people who use Beehive. Like it was absurdly high, and like he was basically friends with all of the people who would like write on Beehive, talk about Beehive. They would like tweet something and he would reply in like 2 minutes. And like he was just like always there. So like one thing right off the bat was just like always listen to your customers, like maybe even like making friends with the people who like your early adopters or whatever, right? Like he made like a conscious effort to do that, and then you saw it like in the results as well. Because when they asked for like a few changes, he would tell them, yeah, like I'm on it. Like he would be realistic about it. Like if it's like down the timeline, he would say that, and he would actually ship it. And when you do that, like when you keep doing that, all your users or all your early users want to like they'll push your content. And like that's why when I open Twitter, I'm always seeing like, oh, Beehive is great for this, Beehive is great for that. And I feel like that's like part of the entire thing, like that entire feedback circle. So yeah, that was definitely one thing that I learned right off the bat. What else? Hmm, I think, yeah, I think, sorry, you have a question?
No, I'll let you go first. I have a
No,
follow-up.
I think, yeah. So the other thing that like I actually found very interesting and like why I wanted to work with them instead of like other email service providers that I could have reached out to as well was um the flat subscription fee. I thought that was very cool, especially from like a creator's perspective. So I think when it comes to growth marketing, it's like very important to have a mission that like aligns with your users and like makes almost like all the other platforms seem like the enemy in some sense because they're taking away from your user's cut and you're the person saving it. So like having some sort of a narrative built around it. And I think that's what like Beehive's like flat subscription fee did for them. So like that's
Oh,
my
that's
opinion on it.
super interesting. Yeah, like an us
Yeah.
versus them kind of thing, or a
Yeah,
David and
exactly.
Goliath kind of thing. You mentioned his ability to sort of stay on top of the conversation around Beehive. Did you
Mhm.
get any did you get any insight on how he does that? Like, is he setting up Twitter alerts for the Beehive name, or day to day, do you have any insight on like uh tools people could use to do a better job of what he was doing?
So there are tools and like I'll walk through them shortly, but like with Tyler, he's just like if I'm like this obsessed with newsletters
Mm-hmm.
and you're like probably a little more,
Mm-hmm.
he's like through the roof. Like he used to like I knew his like daily routine was like very weird because I was in India at like my time in the evening, which is like 5 or 6 a.m. in wherever he stays. I would get like a Slack alert from him. And he's like, I just woke up thinking about this, this, and this. And like he just gets up, gets his cold brew, and like he's straight to work. Like that guy is mad obsessed. So I think that definitely played a big part. But something that I've been doing recently, because I want to be known more in the newsletter space, is I set up this thing on. Do you know what TweetDeck is?
I have a passing familiarity with it. Is that
Yeah. So
owned by Twitter?
yeah.
That's
So now it
Twitter's
is owned by
version of
Twitter.
this.
Like
Yeah.
I just like checked this out yesterday, and even I realized that it's owned by Twitter now. But it's basically like you can set up like 2 or 3 columns with like specific search queries or like say your notifications. So like for now, I have like a list that I follow of like Twitter marketers that I want to keep up with, and then the other list is like I just kept the word newsletters in the search, and I sorted by like most liked or like most featured. So on the right, every time someone writes the word newsletters and it's getting some traction, I can see it, and if I can help in any way, then I try to respond. So that's how I keep
Oh,
up with it, and that's how I think most founders or like people want like known for a domain can keep up with it.
that's super interesting. Is there anything else that you're using? Because you're on Twitter,
Hmm.
and maybe we'll talk about your Twitter strategy in a little bit, but your sort of broader Twitter strategy. But you're also in other places too. So you and I are both in Jacob Donnelly's a media operator Slack group.
Hmm.
Um, you joined Trends recently. So are there any other tools that you're using to sort of pipe information into like your awareness?
So that's actually something that like I want to work on more consciously. I feel like right now my like source of knowledge is mainly limited to Twitter because like I just like spend time writing, like engaging with people, and then like also just like reading on Twitter. So I just spend way too much time there. So I'm trying to like also like give a shot to LinkedIn, Reddit. Like Reddit is a platform I find like extremely interesting. So like that's somewhere I want to move as well. But in terms of like having like information getting funneled, like it's either Twitter or like newsletters. So that's about it.
That's interesting. What do you find so fascinating about Reddit?
I don't know. I just feel like the entire like you're anonymous and you can still like, and if you still make it on Reddit, it's that feels like the ultimate stamp of like good content
Hmm.
because it's like regardless of your identity, if you have like a lot of Reddit karma, that means you actually have like really good content, or you're just like absolutely funny and like people love that as well. So I think
That's
yeah,
interesting.
either way, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So so you had this opportunity with Tyler. This sparks even more an obsession with newsletters.
Mhm.
And then at some point, psychology of marketing started as something slightly different, right? And then about a couple of months in, you pivoted and you said, hey, this is something that I really want to focus on. What can you
Mhm.
just walk me through like the first couple of months there? What did it start as? And then when did you really get serious about it?
Yeah, so it actually started like before I even worked with Tyler. So that was like last summer in June. That's when I started working with Tyler. In
Mhm.
March, I launched this news. Not last summer, this summer, sorry. And then in March, what I did was I launched this newsletter with a friend called the Water Cooler, and it was like a very basic curated newsletter with like 5 links every week. It was like 2 other newsletter editions, 2 podcast episodes, and one like free resource. So it was that kind of that. It was like a very simple like curated newsletter. And then I just wasn't feeling it. Wasn't fun. Wasn't valuable. And like the best way to tell if you're building something valuable is like checking your DMs. And my DMs was like flooded with like like not a lot of cool people. So I was like, maybe it's time to like step it up. And then I was like, what can I write about? And I was like, like I don't know much about marketing, but I'm learning a lot right now, and like that's definitely where I want to go in the future. So I just picked up marketing, and then from like March to June, I was writing about just marketing, and like I struggled to hit like what 700 subscribers, or like maybe even 1,000. My open rate was like 30%, and it was just like not going well. And then like I kept trying, didn't change much. I was just like, maybe just get better with time. And that didn't happen. And then when I worked with Tyler and his team in at Beehive in the summer, I learned like so much more about like what the better or like what the best newsletters are doing. So I was like, like most of them are like very niche. So I think that's where I needed to start. And that's when I started like niching down, and I asked myself like 2 or 3 questions. One being like, if I had to break down marketing in like 3 pillars, what 3 pillars would I pick? And then after that, it was out of these 3 pillars, what plays to my strengths? And the last one was like, am I like obsessed enough with this topic to write about it for like 52 weeks straight? Because like that's how I was thinking of it. And then it just all came down to marketing psychology, because I'm a psych major at Northwestern right now. And like I'm always reading like those kind of books, like Predictably Rational, and like listening to Dan Ariely podcasts and stuff like that. So I was like, this is like just the logical next step. And when I niched down, it was a slow start, but then stuff really started to pick up because people started to see me as like a domain like expert in that space, and like they knew what to expect from me versus like anything in the marketing realm, which is already so competitive. And I think so from June, where I had like maybe 2,000 subscribers, to like November now, which is like 4 or 5 months later, I've gone from like 2,000 to 16,500 and something.
That's awesome. Yeah, and people can actually see this evolve over time. So I was checking out the history of psychology and marketing today, and I'm looking back in the archives, and it looks like the very first post that I see, at least on the psychology of marketing Beehive,
Mhm.
which it sounds like there was like a little bit of a transition there because you were writing about other stuff beforehand. But
Yeah,
this is,
I archive the older posts, just
oh,
like not
okay.
confuse anyone. Yeah.
Smart move. But yeah, your numbers are spot on. So it says right here, happy Thursday to the 1,500 or 1,523 aspiring marketers. So yeah, you were about 1,500 writers back then, and then you lay out this really cool newsletter on the decoy effect, and at the very bottom, you're like, this is something that I want to focus more on, the psychology of marketing.
Mhm.
Um, Based on today's edition, would you find it valuable if I doubled down on the psychology of marketing? And then
Yeah.
there's like 2 options, hell yes and heck no. So I thought this was an awesome snapshot of sort of a turning point. And like you said, okay, over the last 4 months, you basically 10x the size of the newsletter. So can we talk a little bit about some of your most effective growth channels since then? And by the way, one of the reasons that I wanted to pull you in here is because, well, and I've told you this a couple of times, we've had a few chances to chat
Mhm.
since over the last couple of weeks, but like these are truly great results, and I would say they are on par with what I've seen from other people who uh like do exceptionally well in media. And I typically encounter those people later in their journey. So I'm talking like Sam Parr, Tyler, like I don't know, James Altucher, all these other people who have already built multi-million-dollar media companies. If you go way back in their history, they were aggressive about growth early on. And sometimes when I'm looking at other newsletters that I really admire, I'm surprised to find writers who I think are so great. And then they're saying like, you know, I've sent 90 issues of such and such newsletter and, you know, just hit 2,000 subscribers. And what I want to paint is a picture for people to realize that you can and probably should, but certainly can grow a lot faster than 1,000 subscribers a year if you are more aggressive on the growth strategy side of things rather than the content side. So you're really nailing that. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the main drivers of growth have been for this newsletter over the last 4 months?
Yeah, I definitely can. So like just one thing, like before I start on the growth tactics, is a lot of people say like, oh, like your newsletter is like, if you have good content, it'll spread. And like, I just completely disagree with that, because one, your content has to be so good for it to spread just based on the content's merit, that like you have to be like one of the smartest thinkers out there. And like right off the bat, like I knew like I'm definitely not there, at least not yet. So I was like, I need to work on my distribution strategy as much as possible. And like I kind of made the switch from like 100% content to like say like 60-70% content and like 40 or 30% growth. And then what I did for growth was so I just started to look at what like the newsletters that are growing really quickly are doing already. So one of the newsletters that I look up to, Justin Welsh, he writes on Twitter and LinkedIn, and he has a newsletter called the Saturday Solopreneur. He's grown to like past 60,000 now in like the last few months. And it's been like incredible to watch his journey. So I started to just like distill like what he did and how he did it. And then he launched a course on like how he grew his newsletter. So I was like, okay, cool. Like might as well take it. And so one thing that I noticed was he has this content distribution strategy. And that was the main driver for my organic growth, was that every time I write a newsletter, I spin it up into a thread the next day. I spin it up into like 3 or 4 like small tweets that I spread across like the next month or two, because I don't want to be talking about the same topic like every day for 1 week. So I spread across like the next 1 or 2 months. And then you also like spin up like 2 or 3 CTAs. So like take a fun fact from the newsletter and be like, if you want to read more and see how marketers are implementing it today. And then I do the same thing across like 1 or 2 months again. So that's like a lot of different like content spread across like 1 or 2 months. And that all comes from like the same newsletter. So that's what I adopted. I adopted like the newsletter first content strategy, and then I spun it across Twitter in like multiple formats. So that gave me like like a simple system to like spread my content out and get more clicks, even though I've written it a month back. But to it also like saved me a lot of time, because now like before I even start writing content for the week, half my week is already filled up. So that's just like a very big, like very good bonus to have. So that was number one. Like that was the organic growth strategy. Another thing that I did that worked really well that a lot of people don't do is the Twitter giveaways. And I think like this was what like, I don't know, I just feel like a lot of people's, so let me explain what Twitter giveaway is first. So it's basically you have like a tweet where you say, I just spun up the ultimate swipe file on Threads on marketing psychology. I was going to charge $50 for it. And this is actually how it started. I was going to like spin it up and like charge $50 on Gumroad. And then I was like thinking like, what if I put it on Twitter and like I can get probably 1,000 subscribers, and that itself is worth like way more than $50, right? So I was like, let me try that first. If that doesn't work, then we'll do the Gumroad thing anyways. So I did it the first time, and then I said, I was going to sell it for $50, but I'm giving it away for free today. If you want this, just reply free and I'll send it to you. And like I still remember that day. Like I tried it for the first time in the summer, and that was my first like very big jump in the newsletter. I added like almost 2,000 subscribers overnight. Wow. And like I still remember sitting in my bed at like 4 a.m. and like looking at the graph go. I'm like, I just can't stop watching this. So like I'm just gonna see like how far it goes. I slept, I woke up the next morning and like almost 2,000 subscribers from that one giveaway. And a lot of people like had a problem with it, because when you press free, I send a DM with a link that goes to my Beehive blog, and that's behind like a gated like page. So you got to drop your email and subscribe to my newsletter to get access to it. And like that's why a lot of people think like, oh, like you shouldn't do like opt in, like, and they put in brackets saying like no opt in required. And I feel like, you know what, like I've put in like 4 or 5 hours doing this. I think like if you like this, you'll definitely like my content. So I'm not like afraid to ask for an email. So if you
Mhm.
want it, you drop your email, you take it. And if you don't want to stick with the newsletter, just subscribe, like just unsubscribe after. But I still feel like it's only fair to ask for people to subscribe to watch, or like, because like it's something I would charge $50 for, but I'm giving it away for free. The
Mhm.
least you could do is give me your email. And then if you don't want to subscribe or stay subscribed, you can just unsubscribe after. So that's what I did. And like it's worked very well. So I do it like like I do it like once every 2 months.
Mhm.
And it's been adding, like I've done it twice and it's added like 4,000 subscribers. And like that's
Wow.
been like amazing. The only caveat is the quality of subscribers is not great, because a lot of people come, they like check it out, they want the swipe file, and then they churn, which is fair, right? But the
Mhm.
ones who stick around have a pretty solid open rate. And like for me, like seeing even like 50% of the 4,000 or like 5,000 stick around and like enjoy the content makes
Yeah.
doing all of this worth it, regardless of like what people say about like you shouldn't be asking for emails if you're doing a free giveaway. Like, I don't know, like I feel like it's fine. So I'm going to continue doing it. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. I think I agree with you. Also, there's like a cultural aspect of this too, where people I think have been pretty well prepared now to expect to give something for free content if it's quality. So it's, I don't know, I think it's a little dramatic for people to be jarred by asking for an email in exchange for something that's like high quality. That being said, obviously you get like one shot at that. It's got to be good, because if they give you their email and it's not, doesn't live
Yeah.
up to their expectations, um, they're never going to try. They're never going to try it again. So can you tell me a little bit more about the tech stack that powers that? So it sounds like something is automatically replying to people.
Mhm.
What are you using for that? So
So
when
like
they,
for most of
you're
my Twitter content, I use
okay.
tweethunter.io. It's called tweethunter.io. And essentially like it just tracks when people reply. So they don't even have to reply saying free. It's just like some, like I keep it easy, like one simple word, because that's like they just like click it, like quickly. And then I'm hoping other people see the word free and they're just like, okay, like what is this? Let me also just type free and like see what I get. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think that builds a lot of momentum. And then when tweethunter like sort of tracks that people have replied free, it automatically sends them the same DM. And like that DM has a link. So I say like, yo, like thank you so much for like, like replying to my tweet. Here's the page where you'll find your content. And then I link out to the page and they just drop their email in there. And like that page is entirely powered by Beehive. So Tweet Hunter and Beehive is what I use.
Can I ask your opinion on something? Because I've been critical of this strategy in the past, and
Mhm.
partly that's just because I saw a lot of people using it all at once. Why, in your view, have people reply if you could just post a link straight to the Beehive page inside the tweet? Like if you could say, I just created this swipe file.
Mhm.
Here's the link. Why do that? Is it that the reply builds like an extra layer of commitment, or why have the reply at all?
So like this sort of goes to like my marketing psychology stuff. And like I ran like a small A/B test on this before actually. And so what I did was, usually what I do is I write like a tweet saying like, this Thursday I wrote about X, Y, and Z. If you want to check it out, grab it here. Right. And like that gets like, I don't know, like say like 20 to 100 clicks,
Hmm.
for example. Right. The next week, what I tried was I did the same giveaway tactic where I was like, okay, like it was something about Steve Jobs and like how he used this marketing tactic. I was like, if you want to learn more, comment free on this tweet and I'll send it to you. And I got like 200 comments that day and
Hmm.
200 people reading my newsletter. So I think it all comes down to like that sort of even artificial exclusivity that you can like, like bring out in people and like sort of induce that scarcity effect, right? Like when people think it's like scarce, they want to go more for it. So you'll see a lot of people saying only free for the first 750 people. Like that also works well because people are like, I don't want to regret not typing in free because I can't do it later. So might as well just do it now and like take what I can get. And like I feel like that's what's at play here, because when you just put the link in, firstly the algorithm doesn't like that, so you anyways like don't get seen by most of your audience, so that sort of pushes it down. But when you do the tweet giveaway, it's like one, scarcity, two, like momentum racks up, right? when you put the link, people just click the link. But when you put that giveaway thing, everyone's commenting free, and then their audience sees it, and then their audience sees it. So like it just goes on and on. So I think that's why it works a lot better.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah, you give me some new things to think about there.
Yeah, and you can do that without even the gated stuff. So if you're like against, which I completely understand, if you're against like asking people to drop their email to see some sort of content, like this giveaway that I'm talking about that I did with Steve Jobs' example was just like a link to a page. Like there was no gated content. So you can do that as well and just get more eyeballs on your content, hoping that some of them will convert.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I personally, I don't, and one of the reasons I bring it up is that, well, I would say personal curiosity, but then also because I'm on the record as having said, like, just share the content. So I know somebody listening to this is going to hear, if I don't push back on this, they're going to hear this and be like, well, what about the time Ethan tweeted this and just said how ridiculous this is? So I am not against gating content. I think the reason that I had pushback on it on Twitter was that, like, you know what it is for me? It's a format thing. I think a lot of people all of a sudden started using the exact same structure on the tweet. And you see it everywhere. Everybody who's here, who's listening to this on Twitter knows exactly what we're talking about, whether it's this giveaway or like threads. You know, there's like a couple of people who are innovating thread formats, but then everybody just copies them across the board. And so I've got some like snobbish opinions on that, but I agree with what you're saying about the algorithm and how your reach expands if you force different kinds of engagement on a tweet. And that's really interesting. And yeah, I'm going to think about this some more. I also think it could be fun. Like I would be less resistant to this if for myself personally, if I were to do it in a way that matched my voice better. So like instead of saying comment like free or, you know, give me or something like that. Like, I think there's an opportunity to kind of make a joke there or put something in that matches whatever your voice is as a publication. And I'm just thinking through this for myself. I'm like, well, maybe if I saw that, I would be less reactive to this, just more voice. But overall, I think the strategy is super interesting. You mentioned another one that I really wanted to dig into and understand more about. So you said that you are also growing, you're using LinkedIn a lot to grow the newsletter. Can you talk to me about how you're doing that?
Whatever I write on Twitter, copy paste and like hit publish on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the strategy. And like actually lately, like a couple of like my friends who are like also creators and I have been discussing like about like the LinkedIn strategy and like how they're like pushing creators so much and there's so much more opportunity for growth there. So like in the next few weeks, I'm like experimenting with like a LinkedIn first approach where I write the content that suits LinkedIn better first. And then I just like treat Twitter almost as an afterthought where I'm like, okay, like this is already on LinkedIn. I'm just going to copy paste, maybe shorten it a bit because like LinkedIn allows for longer posts, shorten it a bit and like post it on Twitter. And I want to see how that does for like growth and like just like traction in terms of the newsletter.
Almost like would you consider that's like what Jack Rains is doing right now, or is that slightly different?
Slightly different in the sense that I'm not that funny, but like yeah, I think pretty much the same. Less so of like I think he does like long posts and then he takes a screenshot and posts it across. Mine is more like just like long posts. I shorten them down and then I post those on Twitter. So I think that's the difference.
For anybody who isn't familiar with Jack, he runs a newsletter called Young Money, which is a finance newsletter, and he absolutely trolls the hell out of LinkedIn. So he'll post things like, you know, in my city they're offering, what was it, like $10 if you get vaccinated. So I've been vaccinated like 180 times or something like that. And he'll write these long, involved, ridiculous money posts and post them to LinkedIn, and it absolutely stirs panic every single time. So just to drill in a little bit closer on the LinkedIn thing, because I think there's a lot of people who have sort of like recognized that Twitter, you know, there's a lot of opportunity there to grow, but not a lot of people are focusing on LinkedIn. If I remember from our first conversation, you had mentioned something about like a curation strategy there too, where you were like sharing popular tweets from creator friends on LinkedIn in like a roundup format or something like that. Am I getting that right? And can you just talk me through a little bit more of how that's how that works and if it's been effective?
Yeah. So like I basically launched a business page on LinkedIn called Psychology of Marketing. And what essentially that does is like I curate tweets based on like marketing psychology or marketing from like other creators. I take a screenshot of that. I post it on the business page. And like I give them credit in the first line. This is more of like just like curations of content related to marketing psychology and like getting more eyeballs directly or indirectly on psychology and marketing as a brand. So it's more of like an awareness play. And like that did pretty well. Like it's very like fairly simple to grow. You just post like one, you take like one Twitter thread, turn it into a carousel, which is basically like on LinkedIn when you must have like if you scroll and you like see those PDFs where you can just keep swiping right, that's basically like a carousel. So I would turn a thread into a carousel. And then when you do that, that gets quite a bit of traction. And I used to have like a small PS saying like, you want to learn more about marketing psychology, go here. That would take them to the Beehive link. And so that being said, like it was easy to grow the business page, but I've stopped doing it since because one, the quality of subscribers may have been good, but the quantity was very less. Like you add only like say 5 every post that you do, and like that's not like high, like like that's not like just a priority on my list if I'm adding just 5 a day.
Mhm.
So I've been like stopping that for now. But the other thing is like you want when you post it and like you want to maintain the focus on your brand, I think it's unfair to have like other people's content there in some way. So like it just felt like pretty uncomfortable to do that. And like that paired with like barely any traction was just like, okay, like might as well like stop doing this. But yeah, that was something that I used to do before, and that got me like quite a few subs when a couple of like carousels went viral, and they
Mm.
have like 50% open rates, which is great.
Oh,
But
that's interesting.
yeah, but like not enough in terms of volume, and like just feels a little weird, so I stopped.
That's really interesting. Um, yeah, I think what I like about, or one of the things that I like about your approach is that you're like, you seem very quick to act on new ideas, and there's this term called like, I think it's pronounced bricolage, which has to do with taking things that exist and like reformatting them in new ways, creating new ideas out of existing ideas. And I think you do a really interesting job of this across your different growth efforts. Are there any other growth hacks or channels or initiatives that you've tried that have been like surprisingly effective that you're going to either continue or iterate on?
One, let me just shut the air conditioner so it doesn't. Yeah. So I'm like one thing, like it's not really a strategy, but like the recommendations network on Beehive is like amazing. High quality subscribers, high volume. And like it's like it's basic logic, right? Like if you meet your audience where they already are, like they're all like already invested or like interested in newsletters. So like by extension, when they come to your newsletter, they're gonna be like pretty regular with it. So I think it's not really a strategy per se. Like basically just go out there and network with like creators in your space at like the same level as you in terms of like newsletter subscribers, and like try to like like recommend each other, help each other grow. That's been like super helpful for me in like at least the last 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's funny, I hadn't thought about this until just now, but I interviewed a lot of people who were early to the newsletter space, and one of the most effective things for them, they would what do they call it? It's like newsletter swaps.
Yeah.
Almost like you know, rappers on old albums. But the way that used to work was back in the day, you would mention somebody else's newsletter, like in the ad space for your newsletter, or
Yeah.
somebody would have, say, 3 ad slots, and they would always reserve one for mentioning somebody else's newsletter. And I hadn't thought about it until just now, but you're making me think that this new phase of recommendation engines, which we've seen on Beehive, also Substack does it. Um, uh, Spark Loop
Yeah.
allows for some version of this for people who are sort
Mm-hmm.
of like operating on the same ecosystem. So we're seeing it more and more. And basically what people have done is like streamline the newsletter swap. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how that's
Yeah, they've
evolved.
like internalized the entire tech behind like newsletter swaps, right? Like it's like more of a, you don't have to plug it every newsletter, but it's like there forever. Like
Yeah.
whenever someone subscribes to your newsletter. But yeah, I also like do recommend cross promotions a lot, because if you see the stats, like so I get like when my recommendations come in, they have like about 47, 48% open rates, which is like right where I wanted to be. But my average is still 50%. And the reason that is because the ones that come from cross promotions have an open rate of like 68% and like a
Wow.
click rate of like 18%. Because like I that's also like a result of me reaching out to specifically marketing newsletters, like not just any random newsletters, and then like reaching out to marketing newsletters where I think the person has a pretty loyal audience. So like both of those things combined will result in like very high quality, perhaps even like high volume subscribers. So like cross promotions are definitely very helpful. Like I still do that same thing where I have like one thing in my newsletter in my secondary in my classified section that is booked out for like a cross promotion every week.
You've talked a little bit about how you stay up to date on the conversation, like on Twitter with TweetDeck. How else do you find newsletter creators that you think you might want to network with? Like, is that a thing that you do on purpose, devote specific time to, or are you just kind of stumbling across people and making
Yeah,
that
just
judgment call as you go?
yeah, stumbling across people making judgment calls. I don't have like a system, although I think that would be pretty helpful to have.
Um, okay, I got a couple other questions I want to talk about. Thanks for digging in on the growth thing. Again, what I hope people hear here is like it's possible to grow aggressively. I think a lot of people don't, and myself included, don't come from growth marketing backgrounds. And so it's easy to overemphasize the content side, underemphasize the distribution side, when really distribution is going to solve a lot of your problems early on as a creator. So I hope that was helpful for people. And congratulations. It's going really well. Let's talk revenue. So you said you've already done several thousand in revenue. Is that strictly through Beehive's ad network, or where did those customers come from?
So I haven't done anything with like Beehive's ad network yet. It's been primarily like my like inbound like offers that have come in and like me talking to them, like planning out like marketing campaigns with them and then like going ahead with that. And like I can like walk you through like how their entire system works if that's helpful
For Beehive or for the way you've done it so far?
for the way I've done it so far.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. Maybe like the first sale. How'd that take place?
Okay, so I mean the first sale I didn't have any like system in place. It was just like someone reaching out like, do you take sponsorships? And I was like actually no, but I was like, yeah, hell yeah, of course I take sponsorships. And then like I was like, okay, like how do I do this? And then I reached out to a couple of friends and I was like, okay, like how are you doing this? What is your price? And then I just like, like drill them with questions.
Yeah.
And then I like replied to that person with like a very like professional tone. And I was like, like this will be charged X, Y, and Z. And so that's how it started. Like it was just like a little bit of me being scrappy and like,
Yeah.
like acting like I had like an entire system in place. And so that like seemed to work and that person bought a slot. And I can like walk through the numbers as well, like how I like calculated numbers. I think it was like my first sponsorship was at around, seems like such a long time ago, maybe like 8,000 or something subscribers. And I was looking at like other newsletters, how they're charging, and basically got a number as to like how much they charge per subscriber, like per subscriber in each newsletter. So I like came to a number of like, I don't know, for 8,000, I came to a number of like 400 or something. And like that was more so like, I don't think it was a conservative number, but that was by design. Like I wanted to see, because I had like a specifically marketing psychology focused audience, if I could pull off a slightly higher number. And like it seemed to be like working pretty well. Everyone was like okay with like buying a slot for 400. So I was like, okay, like that seems to be fine. And then we grew to like 10,000. And then when I hit that like 10,000 mark, I was like, okay, like I can step it up a notch now. And so now it's like 500 for like each primary slot. And like this actually reminds me that I haven't increased the price in a while. So I might be doing that soon, but we're almost booked out till the end of the year, like just like
Wow.
one slot left. So I just want to fill up that like one primary slot left. The secondary slot is always like more of like a hustle because like there's like 3 primary slots and you want to like fill up all of them. So that's kind of more painful. But yeah, now how the entire system works. After the first one, I was realized like I can't just like keep doing this. And if I want to like fill up my slots, I need to like be more proactive about doing it. So I thought about doing like cold emails, and I read like your cold email sales playbook from like the hustle and how Sam Parr did it. And I was like, before I even start doing that, let's see like if my audience is interested, because I feel like they're probably the most interested. So what I started doing was the primary, like the introduction, my primary slot, a bit of like a trailer as to what the newsletter is going to be about, and a little like into the content, into the depths. And then once the newsletter is over at the bottom, I would have like a classified section where I spoke about click-worthy resources of the week. and I would have like 4 to 5 click-worthy resources. And most of the times they're like actually stuff that I find interesting. So like 3 out of 5 are like pretty much stuff that I find interesting. And then at the bottom, I would have all the content that is in bold is sponsored advertisements. Click here to get yours. And
Oh,
when
nice.
when they click that, it would take them to a type form. The type form is like a cool trick that I got from my friend Marketing Max on Twitter. And like it basically like asks them like 6 or 7 questions about their budget, why they want to do this, what success would look like, and stuff like that. One is like to get more details, like get like what their goal with it is, and like see if we're a fit. Like I don't want to take I wouldn't want to take a crypto company as a sponsor and like tank my like advertising reputation, because like that's not going to get any clicks. And like
Mhm.
my audience will also just be like this guy's just like, like he's a sellout, like he's just doing it for the money at this point, right? So like I don't want to do that. So like one is to see if it's a fit, and second is that when they fill up this form, these like people who want to sponsor your newsletter like get more skin in the game in some way. Like they like have put an effort to finish that form, so they're more likely to like follow up or like follow through and get done with the sponsorship. And like that's something I've noticed, like it's worked way better. The form has worked way better in like having people like finish through with the deal, as compared to just like a normal convo on Twitter where like sometimes they just like ghost you and don't reply. So I feel
Mhm.
like that's definitely helped. And then when they fill up the type form, I get an email, I see their budget, I send them like a recommended like package. And if they buy a package, like you get a discount. So that's what I did to like fill up the entire like sponsorship. And hopefully like it'll be like completely filled up soon.
That's awesome. A couple of things I want to call out for people who are listening to this. So, first of all, like, thank you for digging into that. It's really cool for people to hear how this can look, especially early on. Um, in fact, I think this is even more robust than like most. Like, I think a lot of people are just handling this back and forth via strict email. So
Mhm.
this is pretty cool. Um, for people who are interested, Tim and I did, I think, an entire episode, or it was half an episode, on newsletter ad strategies. So I'll link to that in the show notes. But you're basically following it dead on, which is like the different types of ads that are inside a newsletter do different things for the business. They diversify your income. They make it easier to close clients because you can offer people things at different price ranges. So we'll link to that in the show notes. And then one other thing that I just wanted to kind of double down on that you said there was related to how important it is that you make sure that the audience comes first when you're picking advertisers. So one thing that our like president Adam Ryan at The Hustle, he always used to say, and this was a sentiment that was like shared across the team, was, like, everybody wins when the audience comes first in ad buying or advertiser selection.
Mhm.
And you hit the nail right on the head as to why that is. It's not just because there's like a better fit and you're like suggesting things that your audience wants, but the audience is going to click more. Your advertisers are going to be happier. So you're going to start to get a reputation for like ads that produce and work well and like are worth the money. So it's this snowball of positivity, and the exact opposite will also happen. So for people who think it's like it's actually not a problem to just book out any advertiser, probably shooting yourself in the foot long term, and definitely limiting like what you can eventually charge for these types of things. So that's awesome, man. One thing I wanted to ask about the packages is, how did you structure those? So you said like the price is like for the lead ads around $500 right now, and
Yeah.
sorry advertisers, that's going up soon. Hate to be
Yeah.
the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
But like, what do the other packages look like, and how did you kind of decide on those?
So basically like the primary slot is 500, and then the secondary one is like 300, but you
Mhm.
can only buy the secondary one in packs of 4. And like this was
Interesting.
like half for like the brand, just like ease their like budget spending, but like more so for me, because I don't want to be like out there like getting people to spend $300 on like like one slot. And
Yep.
like asking like getting those slots filled up is a lot of work, because you got to do like 4 each time. So the way I package it is with the primary slots, it's you can buy one for 500, you can buy two for 450, and you can buy 4 for 400. For the secondary slots, you can buy a pack of 4 for 300 each. You can buy a pack of 8 for 250 each, and you can buy a pack of 12 for 200 each. So that's the way I structured it. And then like when they like put in the type form with the budget, like let's say their budget is like 2000, depending on like, I would initially prioritize primary slots just to get them filled up. So now that they're filled up, what I do is I prioritize the secondary slots. And I just go like, if it's 2000, I would say you should do 8 secondary slots, and that's like 2000 right there. And if you want, I'll throw in like 1 primary slot on top. And like that's like how I do it. Like if they buy in bulk, like I usually always give like a really nice discount, which is like 1 free slot or something like that. Right. So like for example, someone reached out to me now with a budget of 2K, I'll just be like, okay, like buy like 8 secondary slots and I'll give you like the last primary slot of the year for free. And like for me, it's just like a pain to like actually keep selling these. And like I want to be more focused on like the content and the growth. Like that's like my main thing. That's where my strength is. So like I want to stick to those. But eventually, like the goal is, like you know what the goal is. But like eventually, like the goal is to like be able to sell all of these very quickly.
And then in terms
not do
of
it myself.
it's so smart. And this is like one of the reasons I keep pulling you into like interviews and stuff is like you intuit so many of the things that took people like a long time to learn in the industry. You're just nailing it, dude. So, follow-up question, what technology are you using to manage the ad inventory? Is it just a Google spreadsheet? How do you know what's booked when?
Google spreadsheet. Like I used to do like so I've like I use like Notion to like map out like what content I need to do every week, and like I would have it in that, but then I messed up one time and like I forgot to like include a sponsor, and like I was like felt very bad. I gave them like a free primary slot like the next week and stuff, like made up for it, but I didn't want that to happen again. And what I did was like just like what is the simplest way to do this, and like I built like a Google spreadsheet which has like the primary slots page on one with the dates and like what sponsor I'm including, and then the secondary one on another page with like the dates like sponsor 1, sponsor 2, sponsor 3, and cross promo. So like that's how I like filled it up, and now it's going like it's pretty straightforward. Hard to mess up now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for people listening, that's exactly how we did it at the Hustle too. I mean,
Oh really?
we doing like 10 million plus at that point. Same thing, shared
No
Google
way.
spreadsheet. Yeah, with the dates running down the side and then columns for each ad, basically each ad slot. And
I got the cup for this very episode.
Nice.
If you're wondering how I pay for the Trend subscription, the referral program is how.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. I'm like pretty close to meeting Sampa soon enough.
Yeah, well, hey, you come to Austin, we'll all have to get together and hang out. I was actually just hanging out with Sam yesterday. So
yeah, I saw the tweet today. He just said like, I miss San Francisco so much. And I was like, wait, why?
Yeah, I think there's I don't know, it's Austin. I was surprised to see him say that. I think part of it, whatever, I'm sure he does miss San Francisco. There's a great community there. Part of it also is that like, he's a troublemaker. So it's popular right now to say that San Francisco sucks. So, be the guy who misses San Francisco. Maybe there's going to stir the pot a little bit, but also I think it definitely feels like a lot of the community has shifted to Austin. So I don't know.
Yeah,
people aren't talking about
I'm betting on
SF
that as well.
Yeah.
I hope to be there at some point. So yeah.
Well, this was awesome, man. I'm sure we're gonna have to have you back to do a round 2. But I want to thank you for sort of like breaking open your growth playbook and talking about like all the stuff that you've been working on. It's so cool, very awesome to see somebody who like does so much of this naturally. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to shout out for people listening that they should go check out? I mean, we're gonna link off to Psychology of Marketing, to Newsletters 101. We'll link off to the blog as well. We didn't even get a chance to talk about our theory about blogs, but we'll have to, like I said, we'll have to do a round 2. Anything else you want to shout out?
No, I think that's about it. Like just like the 2 newsletters, the 3 newsletters actually. For now, maybe by like next time we'll have a couple more on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think definitely want to have a chat with you again because there's a lot that I want to talk about as well. And like a lot of like newsletter specific, like outside of my newsletter, but like more so like what the goal is next year with newsletters and like how you're dealing with it and like how you're going about it and like what I want to do in the future with newsletters, I think that's something that I would like, like want to talk out with you, maybe in public as well, right? So like, I think everyone would find that advice helpful.
Totally. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do that. And then, like I said, if you come to Austin, we'll have to do like a little newsletter powwow. Maybe we'll record that one too. There's a whole bunch of people here who are doing cool things in the space. So
100%. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
awesome, man. Okay, well, for everybody listening, hope this was helpful. Definitely be sure to check out Abhi. We'll link to the website and his newsletters and Twitter. Twitter handle is Abhishek Shah 173. So I'll link off to that, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I don't think a lot of them will be able to spell that, but you probably link that.
yeah. But check out the show notes for all the links and check it out. We'll talk to you guys all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Later.
Thank you, man, Ethan.